Sophia, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Thank you so much for joining us. Katie's done a very powerful piece here, and thanks to her, I think a lot of people didn't know that this was going on. Everybody assumes that, you know, when the Prime Minister says, we're going to do an inquiry, that he's actually going to do an inquiry, but it turns out they've done nothing in 4 months.
Unfortunately, that sounds about right. I think the interesting point that Katie makes in her op-ed in our paper today is she says the fact that they're dragging their feet is a scandal in itself. Yeah. And I think if you weren't across this, you'd sort of think, oh, you know, the things get delayed all the time. But the point with this scandal, there's real evil in this scandal and horrific stories. But really at the heart of it, one of the main issues with this scandal is the cover-up. And the fact that institutions that were supposed to be protecting young girls failed. And there were local cover-ups, right? Yeah. And the sense that this is now being delayed, a national inquiry to get justice for these women is being delayed, or stalled, should we say. I think stalled is probably how they would try and caveat it. Just feeds into that sense of a cover-up, of delays, of authorities being reluctant to look into this issue, to deal with it head on.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, one of the problems, they say, is that they can't find a judge who's willing to sort of put their head above the parapet. And you can kind of understand, I suppose, that there is some sensitivity, not necessarily around the subject matter, but just about there is going to be an awful lot of scrutiny, there is going to be an awful lot of kind of, media attention on it as well. And it may well be that some judges don't want to have that put on them individually. But surely, to heavens, there must be a judge in this country, somebody, preferably perhaps a woman, who could take this on and embrace it and say, look, this is something that needs to see justice being done. I mean, you know, what are judges for otherwise?
Totally. I did speak to some officials last night, and they suggested that it wasn't fair to sort of characterise it as no interest, and that there had been a bit of interest kind of thing, and they sort of steered me away from no one wanted to go for it. But the point is, we're 4 months in and no one's been appointed. Right. And, you know, look, we as Brits, we're quite used to inquiries taking a long time and the state being sluggish and moving at a slow pace. But if COVID taught us anything, it's that when the state wants to move, it can move fast. Of course. And if the will was there, I think we could get on with this job pretty quickly. Right.
And that's the problem as well. I mean, Jess Phillips is one of the key players in this. There's a picture of her on the page. It's got promises from Jess Phillips, promises from Keir Starmer, promises from Yvette Cooper. I mean, she promised, for example, that as the Safeguarding for Women and Girls Minister for violence against women and girls, by the way, she said, oh, yeah, this will all happen very quickly. You know, we're going to put a rush on it. She said that the inquiry would happen fast. It wouldn't go on for years and years and years, and it would be absolutely kind of, as they like to say, laser-focused on the victims. And none of that has happened. I mean, she seems to have disappeared into the background.
I think there's concerns. I'm not sure about sort of Jess Phillips individually, but I think there's concerns generally that the inquiry might get watered down. I think it's something that victims are really worried about, to sort of include other elements, other types of abuse against children. And I think Katie Lamb in her op-ed makes a really good point that we've had those inquiries. We've looked at these issues. Yeah. What this inquiry really needs to do, and why it is so important, and why we need that national inquiry, is because it really needs to be specific. It really needs to go into. It's a really tough, horrible subject, and it makes us all feel quite uncomfortable. But we need to look at Asian Muslim men grooming gangs, and that's what this needs to focus on. And Katie makes that point really, really, really well.
She does.
And I mean, I'm not sure what's going on, sort of, in government, but there are quite serious concerns among victims that they are trying to water it down, basically.
Sure. So from the people that you spoke to last night, I mean, have they got any hope that this is going to be resolved soon? Are they going to, you know, say we must appoint a judge to run the panel, say by, you know, Christmas or something?
Yeah, well, there's no timeline yet. They don't like to put a timeline on things, do they? I mean, they're you know, they seem sort of steadfast that they want to do this. But what I would also sort of say on the flip side is they did get pushed into doing this. You know, they were you actually mentioned it at the beginning. No, exactly. You know, and I'm sure your viewers will actually remember. You know, Lucy Powell. She got booted out in the reshuffle. Labour MP running to be deputy leader of the Labour Party now. You know, you might remember how she sort of dismissed it when it came up in a debate as dog whistle. And I think there are definitely concerns that sort of, you know, at the heart of elements of the Labour Party, that they're they're reluctant to have a national inquiry. They're reluctant to go. They're reluctant to talk about it. It makes them feel a bit squeamish and a bit uncomfortable. I mean, in their defence, there's some, brilliant Labour MPs like Sarah Champion, who has really stuck up for the victims of these rape gangs. But I think there is an element of squeamishness there as well.
There is, and they're never going to get past that if they don't make people get past it. They literally have to show leadership, and again, something that Keir Starmer's not very good at. Show some leadership and say, look, we need this done, and if it's not done, we will appoint somebody who is perhaps not a judge who can lead the inquiry. Maybe we can appoint somebody who's a senior, civil servant or something. They need to get somebody in charge of it, because without a leader of the panel, they don't really even have terms of reference as to who they can subpoena, who they can get to come and talk in front of it. And as Katie Lamb says, it needs to be a statutory inquiry so that people are compelled to actually give evidence.
Totally. And I'm always a little bit cynical of inquiries because they can take a long time and I get a bit frustrated with things like that. But I think certainly in this case, like what we spoke about earlier, the cover-ups, the institutional cover-ups, the local cover-ups, that's why we need a national inquiry into this scandal. Otherwise, you're just going to have local councils marking their own homework, which is what they have been doing already throughout this scandal for years, for decades. And a national inquiry, they can force witnesses, they can compel witnesses to come forward and speak to them. And I think that is the difference. You can't have these councils, these police forces marking their own homework yet again. Otherwise, it's just pointless.
Exactly. Absolutely right. Sophia, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Sophia Sleigh, Whitehall correspondent of The Sun. Let's just remind ourselves of what Keir Starmer said 4 months ago when he was being interviewed on one of his many jaunts. I think he was in Canada when he was asked about this.
This inquiry, in direct answer to your question, must go where the evidence takes it, and I'll be absolutely clear about that. And if that's questions of ethnicity, that's questions of the role of public officials, if it's questions of assumptions that were made that shouldn't have been made, all of that needs to be uncovered. No stone will be left unturned here.
Yeah, no stone will be left unturned. They've turned no stones over in 4 months, right? More absolutely empty promises from Keir Starmer, the cardboard cutout Prime Minister, as I'd like to call him. Katie Lamb says, 4 months on, why is nothing being done on the rape gangs inquiry? It's a very good question. We don't know the answer. All we know is that it's the usual ducking and diving by the people in Downing Street who are scared to death of criticising anybody for being from an Asian background, criticising any Pakistani rapists. No, we mustn't tell people that that's true. No, we mustn't say that. Let's get a voice note from Pete.
Good morning, Mike. Great show it's going to be today from you as usual. Well, I don't think they want an inquiry into them rape gangs because, it goes a lot higher than just those taxi drivers, doesn't it? It goes an awful lot higher, and I think probably a secret's going to come out or someone's going to blab. It's all about what it is all about, this sort of stuff. It goes a lot higher all the time, doesn't it?